Is bringing back Nazem Kadri to Toronto really the nostalgic reunion everyone's making out to be? Or are the Maple Leafs about to overpay for a 35-year-old center whose best years are clearly behind him just to chase a feel-good story that won't actually make them better? Listen up, because we need to have a serious conversation about something that's been dominating NHL trade rumors for weeks now: the possibility of Nazem Kadri returning to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I'm going to be brutally honest with you right from the start. This feels like one of those situations where nostalgia and emotion are clouding what should be a straightforward hockey decision. NHL insider Darren Dreger just dropped some reality on us, appearing on the Barn Burner podcast, and basically confirming what a lot of us have been thinking. Acquiring Kadri is going to be way more complicated and expensive than Toronto fans want to believe. And it's not just the Leafs in the mix anymore. We're talking about the Vancouver Canucks, the Montreal Canadiens, and potentially others circling around trying to land a veteran center. So buckle up, because this story just got a whole lot more interesting. Let's start with the facts, because in the age of social media hot takes and wishful thinking, we need to ground ourselves in reality. Nazem Kadri is 35 years old. He's signed to the 2027 to 2028 season at a cap hit of $7 million per year. That's 3 more years at $7 million annually for a player who's on the wrong side of 35. Now, before anyone jumps down my throat, let me acknowledge that Kadri is still productive. Last season, he put up 67 points in 82 games, 35 goals and 32 assists. That's solid production, no question about it. But here's the thing that should concern anyone thinking about trading for him. That 67-point total was actually a step back from the 76 points he posted in 2023 to 2024. We're starting to see the decline, folks. It's subtle, but it's there. And when you're talking about committing to 3 more years at $7 million per for a player who's already showing signs of aging, you better be absolutely certain that's a risk worth taking. Now, I know what Toronto fans are thinking, but he won a Stanley Cup with Colorado. He's a proven playoff performer. He knows what it takes to win. And yes, all of that is true. Kadri was a key part of Colorado's championship run in 2021 to 2022, posting 87 points that season, including a career-high 59 assists. His playoff resume is impressive: 44 points in 52 playoff games during that Colorado run, including 19 goals and 25 assists. Those are legitimate credentials that you can't just dismiss. But let's talk about context. That Colorado team was absolutely stacked. They had Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, Mikko Rantanen, Gabriel Landeskog, and a supporting cast that was firing on all cylinders. Kadri played his role perfectly, but he wasn't the reason they won. He was a complementary piece on a championship roster, not the centerpiece. And there's a big difference between those two things. Here's where Darren Dreger's comments become crucial. He appeared on the Barn Burner podcast and dropped some truth bombs that should make every Toronto fan pump the brakes on their Kadri reunion fantasies. First, he confirmed that the Maple Leafs aren't the only team interested. The Vancouver Canucks need help down the middle. The Montreal Canadiens could use veteran scoring punch. And as Dreger put it, just take a lap around the league. There are multiple teams that would love to add Kadri if the price is right. But here's the kicker, and this is where Brad Treliving's job gets really complicated. Calgary Flames GM Craig Conroy isn't just going to give Kadri away. Dreger made it crystal clear. Any deal is going to require a premium payment. That means Toronto or any other team is going to have to pay through the nose to acquire him. We're talking significant assets, probably a combination of prospects, draft picks, and potentially roster players. And that's before you even factor in the salary cap implications. Think about what Toronto would have to give up to make this happen. Calgary knows the Leafs are interested. They know there's emotional attachment and history there. They know Brad Treliving used to be Calgary's GM, which creates an awkward dynamic where Conroy is going to want to prove he's not doing his former colleague any favors. All of that works against Toronto in negotiations. And let's be real about Calgary's perspective here. They came incredibly close to making the playoffs last season. Kadri was a big part of that push. Why would Craig Conroy trade away a productive veteran center unless he's getting a haul in return? He wouldn't, which means any team that wants Kadri is going to have to significantly overpay, and that includes Toronto. Now, here's where things get really interesting. The Montreal Canadiens entering the picture. And honestly, from a pure hockey standpoint, Montreal might actually make more sense as a destination than Toronto. Stay with me here, because I know that's going to anger some people. But let's look at the facts. Montreal has cap space. Like, real cap space that Toronto doesn't have. They can absorb Kadri's $7 million hit without doing salary cap gymnastics or moving out other pieces. That's a huge advantage right there. But more importantly, Montreal has the assets to actually make a competitive offer that Calgary might accept. Dreger's report mentions several Canadiens players who could interest Calgary. Kirby Dach, Jake Evans, Jaden Struble, and Joshua Roy. All of them are young players with upside. Exactly the kind of pieces a team like Calgary would want if they're moving an aging veteran. Plus, Montreal has 9 draft picks in 2026. That gives them incredible flexibility to package picks and prospects in a way that could blow away any offer Toronto puts together. Think about it from Calgary's perspective. Would you rather take a package from Toronto that probably includes lesser prospects and picks, or would you take a package from Montreal that includes someone like Kirby Dach or Joshua Roy plus multiple draft picks? The Montreal offer could be significantly more attractive, especially if Calgary is trying to get younger while remaining competitive. And here's another factor that nobody's really talking about. Calgary has to worry about Rasmus Andersson's contract situation. Andersson is a key piece of their defense, and his deal is coming up. If Calgary is looking at potentially losing both Kadri and Andersson, maybe the smart play is to trade Kadri now, get a haul of assets back, and use that cap space and those assets to extend Andersson and build around their younger core. That makes more sense long-term than holding on to an aging Kadri for another playoff push that might not even materialize. The Vancouver Canucks are also lurking, and they're in an interesting spot. They need center depth, they have cap space, and they're trying to build on last season's success. Adding Kadri would give them a legitimate second or third line center who can contribute offensively and play in all situations. The fit is obvious, and Vancouver has some young assets they could potentially package to entice Calgary. But here's my biggest issue with this entire Kadri situation, regardless of which team ends up acquiring him. The risk-to-reward ratio just doesn't make sense for a contending team. Yes, Kadri is still productive. Yes, he has playoff experience and a championship pedigree. But you're talking about committing 3 more years at $7 million per to a 35-year-old player who's already showing signs of decline. The last year or two of that deal could be absolutely brutal. And here's the thing that really concerns me. We've seen this movie before. How many times have we watched teams trade significant assets for aging veterans on big contracts, only to have those deals blow up in their faces within a year or two? The decline phase for players in their mid to late 30s can be steep and sudden. One year they're productive contributors. The next year they're overpaid anchors dragging down your salary cap. For Toronto specifically, does adding Kadri actually make them significantly better? Let's think about their current center depth. They've got Auston Matthews, John Tavares, and depth pieces. Would Kadri be an upgrade over what they currently have? Probably, yes. But is that upgrade worth what it's going to cost to acquire him and absorb his contract? That's a much tougher question to answer. Toronto's window is now. They need to maximize every season they have with Matthews in his prime. But does mortgaging future assets for an aging Kadri help them do that? Or does it actually hurt their long-term flexibility? Because if you trade away prospects and picks for Kadri, and then he declines rapidly in years 2 and 3 of his deal, you just handicapped your ability to reload and remain competitive. There's also the emotional factor to consider. Kadri's time in Toronto ended badly. He was suspended in back-to-back playoffs, became a lightning rod for criticism, and ultimately was traded to Colorado. Yes, he won a cup there and has rehabilitated his image. But bringing him back to Toronto puts him right back in that pressure cooker environment where one mistake gets magnified 1,000 times. Is that really the best situation for a 35-year-old player trying to maintain a production? From Calgary's perspective, this is actually a fascinating situation. They hold all the leverage here. Multiple teams are interested, which drives up the price. They're in no rush to move Kadri, unless they get an offer they can't refuse. And Craig Conroy knows that every day he waits, teams get more desperate and potentially offer more. It's a game of chicken, and Calgary is holding the best hand. Here's what I think is going to happen. And this is pure speculation based on the information we have. I think Calgary ultimately does trade Kadri, but not to Toronto. I think Montreal makes the strongest offer, something built around young assets and multiple draft picks that Calgary simply can't refuse. Toronto either can't match that offer or decide the price is too high and backs out. Kadri ends up in Montreal, gets a chance to play meaningful minutes for a team on the rise, and Toronto moves on to other targets. But here's the wild card. What if no team is willing to pay Calgary's asking price? What if Conroy overplays his hand and ends up stuck with Kadri? That's a real possibility, and it would create an awkward situation where Calgary is paying $7 million to a player they clearly wanted to move but couldn't. That wouldn't be ideal for anyone involved. The next few weeks are going to be crucial. As teams finalize their rosters and get into the regular season, the pressure to make moves intensifies. If Calgary is going to trade Kadri, it probably needs to happen sooner rather than later. The longer they wait, the more complicated it becomes. So here's my take on all of this. Nazem Kadri is a good player with impressive credentials, but the cost to acquire him, both in terms of assets going back to Calgary and the commitment to his contract, makes this a risky proposition for any team. Toronto fans who are dreaming of a reunion need to be careful what they wish for, because this could easily become an albatross contract that haunts them for years. Montreal might actually be the best fit if they're willing to pay the price, and Calgary should absolutely maximize their return here while they still can. What do you think? Should Toronto go all in on bringing Kadri back, or is this a trap that they need to avoid? Should Montreal make a big offer and try to land him, or should Calgary just hold on to Kadri and make another playoff push? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear all perspectives on this. And if you're following along with all the latest NHL trade rumors and insider reports, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any updates. The Kadri situation is far from over, and we'll be tracking every development as it happens.